the Autonomic Healing Podcast Christmas edition. In this episode, we'll be taking you on a trip back in time to explore Christmas carols, their history, meaning, and our shared heritage. We hope you enjoy this festive episode. Let's get this conversation started.
Wassail, Ruth.
Drink ale, Tom.
And for those who don't know what wassail means, it means good health.
Yeah.
And the reply is...
I'll drink to that.
Yes, that wassail is from the ancient British Anglo-Saxon. And even though you're not Anglo-Saxon, you're Welsh.
I'm Welsh, yeah.
Yes, there is a difference, but...
And in our Christmas edition, because this is our Christmas edition, we thought we would do some wassailing, although unfortunately we don't have alcoholic beverages in front of us right now.
Probably shouldn't.
But we are going to... Actually, wassailing was drinking up, and also they would go into the parks and sing together. That's what the tradition held.
And you grew up going around Christmas caroling.
Yeah, I did.
That's what you said.
Yeah. When I was younger in Wales, we'd all, wrap up warm woolly hats and scarves, and we would go. We wouldn't sound that good, I don't think. There was always a few people that, thank God, had really good singing voices, but that kept the rest of us up to speed. But we would go from door to door. Did you not do that?
I did a little bit.
Yeah.
But mostly the singing of Christmas carols was in church during services and the candlelight Christmas Eve service and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's when we would do it. But there was lots of singing around the house because my mother was a beautiful singer, choir director at the church, and my father was an excellent singer, and they sang in a quartet, and so there was always lots of music around. My sister was beautiful singer and played piano, which I cannot do because I have no independence of fingers. But this is about Christmas carols and our shared heritage across the pond. And we're going to celebrate.
Yeah. And we're hoping to just go through some beautiful Christmas carols in this episode and talk about some of the history. And like you said, there's this our heritage of being Welsh, and you grew up in Michigan.
The northern forests of the peninsula. Yep.
But we are wassailing here. And do you want to start us off? And actually, I mean, you say about your sister and your mother being wonderful singers, but you too have an amazing voice and have... Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my bachelor's degree is in vocal performance and choral direction, and that's worth a little more than a Pizza Hut coupon, but at seasons like this, it comes in handy.
So, listeners, you're in for a treat, because what we're going to do is Tom's going to sing a few of these carols, and then we're going to just chat about them in terms of reflecting what they mean, what they convey, what they say about humanity, and how we engage with Christmas. So do you want to kick us off with...
And what the season can be.
And what the season can be.
So here we come a-wassailing among the leaves so green. Here we come a-wandering so fairly to be seen. Love and joy come to you, and to you a wassail too. God bless you and send you a happy new year. God send you a happy new year.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. Well, the first carol that we are going to talk about in this episode is Deck the Halls. And the reason is because it's from Wales, which is where I'm from. And do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the history behind Deck the Halls?
Well, Deck the Halls was a Welsh festival drinking song. And it goes back way into the history in England there in Wales, and drinking was something that was very festive to do around the darkness and of the late winter time and the turning of the calendar into the new year, and decking the halls with boughs of holly and
Christmas
all of
decorations.
that. Absolutely.
That's where we get it from.
Yes.
It all came from Wales.
Yeah, well,
Not
okay,
really.
but yeah, and using whatever was available to decorate the home with the greenery and things like that, and the evergreen, because this is about life in the midst of the darkness of winter, when everything is, the leaves have fallen and the crops have gone dormant, and this is the time of year when we celebrate and bring light into a very dark time of years. And so that history in Wales was to deck the hall, or, if I could put it this way, deck the hall with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel, fa la 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 la. Troll the ancient Yuletide carol, fa la 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 la. See the blazing Yule before us, fa la 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 la. Strike the harp and join the chorus, fa la 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 la. Follow me in merry measure, fa la 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 la. While I tell of Yuletide treasure, fa la 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 la. So follow me in merry measure.
I know, and I think there's something, that carol really is about joy, isn't it? It's about bringing joy in. Like, I love what you said about bringing joy in that dark season.
Yeah.
And interestingly, with that carol, it was more about the trajectory into the new year rather than just Christmas. And I think that, it's interesting, even in our the ways we kind of wish people a Merry Christmas. Often it was a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And they seem to be partnered, those two things, because it's not just about Christmas. It's about coming into a new season as well. And so that was from Wales. So I'm proud for that. And I'm sure I can imagine all those Welsh people wassailing and being jolly and filling the halls with holly and that's what we do now. I've just spent the weekend trying to decorate my house.
I haven't started yet, but that's on the agenda.
We'll get there. Well, our next carol that we're going to talk about is The First Noel.
Yes.
And this is actually from Cornish origin. And so just tell us a little bit more about that, Tom.
So Cornwall is a county of England, but it's south of Wales. So the lower little tip of the continent, or the island of England, south of Wales, is where Cornwall was.
And fun fact, my grandfather was born in Falmouth, which is the southernmost tip of the Cornish seaside, as we call it. And so I have like some Cornish blood in my family, and he married my grandmother, and they lived in Wales for their married life. But so I remember going trips to Falmouth and having Cornish pasties and going on the ferry and going down the cobblestone streets. And if you ever visit England, if anyone wants to, any of our listeners who are American visit England or anywhere else around the world for that matter, I highly recommend going to Falmouth. It's beautiful.
So the first Noel is of Cornish origin, and it dates from the early 1800s. And it was first published in Carols Ancient and Modern, and was popularized around that time. And the reason for the writing of it and the popularization is because while there had been a long history of caroling and wassailing and all of that, both in England and in the United States, in the colonies here, but the idea of celebrating Christmas and caroling and wassailing had been dying out. People were just too busy to do all those kinds of things. And that was a wonderful tradition that was dying out. People were just not doing it much anymore or singing Christmas carols. And so there was this publication of Carols Ancient and Modern that included the first Noel. And the first Noel is the story, had its roots way back in the 15th century, the 1400s. So it had been around a very long time, but it wasn't popular anymore. It was just one of those traditions that had just died out. And so this carol was included in Carols Ancient and Modern. And
then it resurged.
Noel. And then it became resurgent, and people were going, wow, this is wonderful. Why aren't we doing this? And then they started singing. And so the first Noel, transitioning in our podcast from Christmas and focusing on the new year, but to more about Christmas. And
also this, I mean, you know, one of the differences between the first Noel and Deck the Halls is that, you know, Deck the Halls was really just this kind of from pagan celebrations, really. It was just like winter going into a new year and celebration.
Yule log and bringing light and warmth.
Whereas this one, what we see here, and which is what we see in a lot of Christmas carols, has more religious content around the birth of Christ.
So Noel, French for he's born. The first Noel, the angels did say, was to certain poor shepherds in fields as they lay. In fields where they lay keeping their sheep, on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel.
Thank you, Tom. Wonderful. The next carol that we'd love to bring up and talk about, and again, it's from the other side of the pond, is the English. It's a carol that was based on an English poet, Christina Rossetti, and in 1872, in the bleak midwinter. And it's a beautiful. You mentioned earlier that this is one of your favourites. Tell us why. Why is it your favourite carol?
Because, and this isn't as well known as many are, but I think it's just beautiful. But my son was born at the end of November, and it's the dark of winter, and I used this song. The carol has been always very special to me. I've always loved it. It's just a beautiful tune. And I used it as a lullaby. And so it started off because it was seasonal in the bleak midwinter and one of my favorites, but it turned into a lullaby for my son. And so it found its way throughout the year as my son was just a babe like the baby Christ in my arms. And so I would sing this to get him to fall to sleep.
Oh. And I think, Tom, before you actually sing it, I love the fact, and we brought this up in our conversation as we were putting this together, just how when you research some of these carols, how many of them are based on poetry. And I think that that's a really interesting. There's something about poetry that carries. It's like it carries a message that, in some ways, it's like an ache of humanity, or it's the longings of humanity,
deepest stirrings in our souls,
of song and poetry, and I think that that's why there's something so beautiful around this Christmas time of engaging with songs. But the history of these came from people who were in those spaces, longing, aching, hoping for various different things. So I just wanted to bring that up with poetry. And, obviously I love writing poetry myself. So I hadn't realised that so many of the songs were based on poems that people had written. And so this one is based on this English poet, Christina Rossetti. And, you can see the poetic language there, just beautiful. I think the bleak midwinter is just like, you can imagine it as soon as you just read those words, and the frosty wind made moan. Some just like beautiful words there that describe winter and the hardness of winter, really. And that can be actual winter, or it can be the winter, a season of a winter, that we've gone through stress and trauma and hardship. But then there's this hope, the angels and archangels, this hope of a child, this hope of new life, this hope of light that will come eventually, even though we're in a dark place. So I would love to invite you to sing your favourite Christmas carol.
In the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan. Earth stood hard as iron, water like a stone. Snow had fallen, snow on snow, snow on snow. In the bleak midwinter, long, long ago, angels and archangels may have traveled there. Cherubim and seraphim thronged in the air, but only his mother in her maiden bliss worship the beloved with a kiss. What then can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would give a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. But what can I give him? I will give my heart. And yes, that's very emotional for me, because I was just remembering holding my newborn son in my arms and singing him to sleep.
And I love the words there in that last stanza, poor as I am, what can I give? But there is this, which is what we literally, our last episode was defer to loving.
Yeah.
And there is actually, in the face of trial, in the face of hardship, in the face of dark winter, when we feel the poverty of being human, we can give our heart, we can defer to loving, we can, and whether that's your son or whether that's a friend or whether that's a community, I think that's a really strong theme in that beautiful carol.
Yes.
And I think the theme of love is very much the theme of the birth of Christ too.
Yes.
That's the essence of that story, is that, even in Scripture it says God so loved the world that
he gave.
Yeah, that he gave his only son, so that there's this light that comes into the darkness. So there's this hope that comes about when all seems hopeless, but it comes from love. So I love that, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. And beautiful, beautiful carol. So we are moving now from the UK, Wales and Cornwall and England, across, if I was in the UK now, I'd say across the pond, but here to the US, and just some carols that have come from the United States and have been penned from this land here. And the first one we're going to talk about, and it's got a fascinating story behind it. So I'd love you to share a little bit about that. It's called I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. And one of the things that, and it was by, it was by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, which you're going to tell us about in a moment. But one of the things I love about just doing this episode is there's so many carols that you forget about, and you just suddenly read them or you hear them and you're like, oh my gosh, like I remember that one. And this is one of those for me.
Yes.
I remember it growing up, but I just I haven't engaged with it for so long. But tell us a little bit about Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and a bit of the history behind why this carol was written.
Yeah. Keeping with the father and son theme, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow is a noted early American poet. He wrote the famous poem, The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, which has some things that are not quite accurate historically, but it's that midnight ride of Paul Revere. And Henry Wadsworth Longfellow composed the poem, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, as a response to the Civil War era. And so when you think of I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, you have to go back to the Civil War here in the United States and the cultural war that was going on between the culture of the North and the South, and the abolition of slavery, and would this remain a united country, or were we destined for division? And the Civil War was a terrible thing. And back in that day, there was triage. Medical care and surgery was in its infancy. There wasn't much. They would triage the soldiers coming off of the brutal battle injuries. But then they would largely be left to the civilian population to take care of them and to see to their rehabilitation. And Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, his son, had enlisted against his wishes, to fight in the Northern cause against slavery. And he had stopped hearing from him. And so Longfellow actually made the trip to where he last knew that his son had been in battle, and searched the surrounding towns and found him recovering in a terrible state from his injuries in the battle. And it was around Christmas time that he was tending to his son. They'd rented a place, and he was tending to his son during the rehabilitation, and it was Christmas time. And as Longfellow was sitting with his son in his convalescence, recovering from what was near death, the bells in the local church were ringing out. And he heard, and so that inspired Longfellow to compose the poem that is the heart of I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. And I'll just sing a little bit of it, but you'll hear about the conflict, and that there is no peace, and the darkness and despair of war, and people just not figuring out how to live in peace with one another. So, I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and mild and sweet their songs repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head, there is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then rang the bells more loud and deep, God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men.
Thank you, Tom. I find actually I'm getting moved by that song. I think because wow, it was written such a long time ago, and yet that ache that he was feeling
so prevalent.
It's so prevalent today. When I think about people all over the world, I think that they could sing that song. I think we all feel that way.
Yes.
Of there is no peace on earth. And when we think about Israel and Gaza and
Ukraine and Russia and the current controversy about even funding.
Yeah, and so those words are so...
Support for the independence, yes.
But then what I find from that is just there's this depth of despair. In despair, I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said. But then it's also... Then the bells rang more loud and deep, and there's this kind of wrestle in humanity to not give up.
The wrong shall fail. The right prevail with peace on earth. Goodwill to men if we'll only give ourselves to that.
Yeah. So it's a deeply moving carol that really talks about, I think, that the longing of the human heart for goodness, for peace, for all of this wrong stuff to stop. And what better time than at Christmas to reflect on that and to join with that song. Yeah. And say yes and amen, really, to those words. So thank you for that. Well, we are moving to our next carol. This is I would imagine everyone knows this carol.
This is almost the song,
the classic
Carol for Christmas.
We all sang it as children. Oh, little town of Bethlehem.
Yes.
I probably had a tea towel on my head at some point, acting as
a
shepherd.
Different tune in England.
Yes.
Set to Forest Green there, and in the United States to St. Louis.
Yes.
The poem's the same, but the tune is different.
Which is why I probably sing it in all sorts of different tunes, because I'm so confused now. But but we all grew up, it's a classic carol that, if you have kids, you'll go and watch their carol concerts and they'll sing it there, and we've all sang it. But tell us a little bit about the carol, what is it
the
describing?
History, where did it come from? Yeah. Yes. O little town of Bethlehem. Yep. Interestingly, we're just going to fast forward a couple of years from I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day and Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. We're just going to go a couple of years ahead to the end of the Civil War. And this is Reconstruction is happening and trying to knit the nation back together and maybe find that peace on earth. And the wrong had failed and the right had prevailed. And Philip Brooks was a staunch abolitionist. And when President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, there was the funeral address, and that was by Philip Brooks, who wrote the poem, O Little Town of Bethlehem. Why in the context is really significant to me. And I don't think you can think of O Little Town of Bethlehem without contextualizing it, because Philip Brooks had just given the funeral address for President Abraham Lincoln, and he had been assassinated. And in the aftermath of the turmoil and all that, and the difficulty in Philip Brooks' life, he went on holy pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And it was while visiting Bethlehem in the stillness of that night that to Philip Brooks was such a contrast to the Civil War years and to Lincoln's assassination. And so that's when he penned the poem, O Little Town of Bethlehem, that, as we've said, is set to one tune in the United States and to another tune in England, because the Civil War in the United States was about slavery, and that was had been an issue in England as well.
Yeah.
They had been abolished slavery many years before, but there was that tied history. So, O Little Town of Bethlehem. O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie, above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by. Yet in thy dark streets shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight.
It's such a powerful line.
Yeah.
Or two lines, yeah. And I was thinking that, Tom, I'm so glad we actually highlighted this carol, because I think because of its familiarity, we can just think, oh yeah, Little Town of Bethlehem, and we can focus on it's just like part of the kids' carol concert. But actually, I mean, what profound words that you just sang.
Yeah.
And deep, I have deep resonance with that. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight, this little town of Bethlehem. The hope that happened in that space can hold all of the hopes and all of the fears of humanity in one space. I think that is that
is so resonant to Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, as I'm reflecting on it, in this Christmas season, as we get busy with decorations and all sorts of stuff like that, that's what I want to. Can you imagine to settle into a place this Christmas season where you can hold all of the hopes and all of the fears and be at peace with that for the coming year,
In that silent night. Above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by. And how can we think of Christmas and caroling without Silent Night, Holy Night?
It's one of the classics, isn't it?
Yes. And that there's just such a peacefulness of the simplicity of the history of that tune, which comes from Austria back in the day, many years ago. And there's all sorts of stories about why it was just a guitar accompanying a soloist and not an organ playing. And there's one version of it that the church flooded and it ruined the organ. There's another story of the mice ate the bellows and the organ would not play. But it was very, very consistent throughout a lot of those villages that it was just a simple thing to have not a big organ, because most of the churches didn't have their own organs. Those were saved for the grand places. And at Christmas time, the carols were just accompanied very simply, either by just a cappella soloists and choirs, or just someone playing guitar. So in the German, Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht. So rather than singing this in the English, Silent Night, Holy Night, allow me to do a verse in the original
Wow.
to honor the poet.
This is going to be a treat. Thank you.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, alles schläft, einsam wacht, nur das Raten heilige Paar. Holder Knabe im lockigen Haar, schlafe in himmlischer Ruhe, schlafe in himmlischer Ruhe.
Thank you, Tom. That was beautiful. I've never actually heard it in the original language.
It's
but
lovely.
It's beautiful sang in that way. But I think I just a couple of reflections on that carol that I think you talked about how we have this tendency to overcomplicate everything. And there's something I think Silent Night, is one of people's favourite carols. And I wonder whether it's because there is something, like, I imagine it being sung with candles lit everywhere, and something really simple. And I wonder whether there's an achiness for that simplicity. And I wonder whether even, the word holy night, I wonder whether holy is simplicity. It is, we don't have to overcomplicate it. We don't need actually as much as stuff as we think we need. And there's something that resonates with people with that carol, I think, because it just makes them feel like they're relieved. It's like, you can just relax. You can enjoy that beautiful, the beautiful words put to that beautiful melody. So I love that carol. But we are moving on, and the carol that we're looking at next is one that you used to sing, right, in churches all the time.
Yep.
It's called "O Holy Night." And tell us a little bit about the history behind this song and any things that your experiences too in that space.
"O Holy Night." I'm not going to give you the history of it. I'm going to share with you the history with me. "O Holy Night" was one of my favorites. And when I was pastoring for those 14 years, and we would have the Christmas Eve service, the candlelight service, one of the traditions that started, and I did it every year for 14 years, was to sing "O Holy Night" a cappella, unaccompanied. And it just became, that was what happened in the Christmas Eve service. And I would sing it a cappella. And "O Holy Night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of the dear Savior's birth." And echoes of what was in those prior carols that we heard about from the Civil War and all the rest of that. "Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn, and tying together the light coming in a time of darkness, and there's a weariness and the soul not feeling its worth." And that's what Christmas can be. It can be so much more than just so many gifts and so many treats and all sorts of stuff. It can be our soul feeling its worth.
Wow. Yeah.
And the humility of falling on our knees.
Fall on your knees.
Hearing the angel voices. So, "O Holy Night." O holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night
of our dear Saviour's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appears, and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, O night divine, O night when Christ was born, O night, O holy night, O night divine. Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise we, let all within us praise his holy name. He knows our need, to our weakness is no stranger. Behold your King, before him lowly bend. Behold your King, before him lowly bend.
Wow. Thank you, Tom. That was amazing. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
Singing that here. And again, very, very moving carol. I was thinking of just some of the words as you were singing it, you know, some of the words that really struck out to me. You know, obviously the fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel's voice. It's like this, it's just this ache of, and this wrestle and this hope all in that one line. But I think that last verse, you know, truly he taught us to love one another.
Yes.
His law is love and his gospel is peace. Change shall he break, for the slave is our brother. That made me want to cry right now, because
and
when
in his name all oppression shall cease. And so many that celebrate Christmas are about oppression. And this is of any time of year. This is about oppression ceasing, not increasing it. And I think that the power and glory of Christ, whose birth we celebrate, the power and glory is about love and peace.
Yeah.
And love and peace break the chains of oppression.
Yeah.
They don't impose them.
How powerful is that, and how needed is that for
in this day
This world.
and for this time where there is so much oppression. Yes.
Well, we are going to finish this episode with,
On a lighter note.
on a much lighter note, with "We wish you a Merry Christmas." And what's really sweet about this,
Come back
is
across the pond.
we're coming back across the pond. Not only just back across the pond, but to the city that
Yep.
I used to live in, Bristol.
Yes.
Just a big shout out to any listeners in Bristol right now. But
the
this,
West Country
the West
of
Country.
England.
Yes, and "We Wish You a Merry Christmas" came from Bristol.
Yes, it did.
And tell us a little bit about that. But and then I want to talk about some of the content of it, because it really reminds me of some of my childhood growing up as in Christmas time.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. And don't we? Isn't
Yes.
that really what it's all about? It's a mystery. And I love that we're entering on a mystery. We don't know the date. We don't know the author. We don't know, other than that it's from the West Country, probably back in the 16th century, back in the 1500s. And the carolers performed for the entertainment of the rich and powerful. But that's not what this was about. If anything, this is all about wishing a Merry Christmas.
Wishing, like I think the word "merry" is like it's joy again, isn't it? It's like have fun, be present. We're extending love, we're extending joy.
Yes. So, on behalf of Ruth and I, and she'll finish up with just a thought about figgy pudding, and but on behalf of Ruth and I, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So bring us some figgy pudding, so bring us some figgy pudding, so bring us some figgy pudding, and bring it right here. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
And we
So
do.
what is this figgy pudding?
The figgy pudding. So I grew up with figgy. We actually call it Christmas pudding.
It's Christmas
you
pudding,
can-
but with added figs to make it sweet.
I think traditionally they used figs, to make it sweet, and that's what that is referring to. So bring
pudding.
us the figgy pudding. Now obviously we don't have so much, and in fact you can get proper traditional Christmas British pudding in World Market.
There you go.
If you want to try it, but it's this rich fruit dense pudding. And I grew up with this, Tom, so on Christmas, and basically there's a couple of traditions around it, which I didn't even know why we were doing what we were doing as a kid. But this little figgy pudding would be brought out on the table, and the first thing that would happen to it is that brandy would be poured all over it, and it would be lit, lit, and it would catch on fire. And I didn't know this until recently, but apparently there is the meaning behind that is that the fire is the passion of Christ, which I think is really nice. At the time, I was just like, oh, this is cool. Like a fire on the table.
More light in a dark time.
Yeah. And the other thing, the strange thing that used to happen with the figgy pudding or the Christmas pudding is that, and traditionally this is what happens many years ago, but actually I experienced this as a child. They would put coins in the pudding. Now, in my experience, my parents wrapped the coins in tin foil, I think mainly so that we could see them and not choke and break a tooth or something, but also maybe for hygiene purposes. But they would hide coins in the pudding, and then they would dish out the pudding, and not everyone would get a coin. So, and apparently this was for good luck. If you found a coin in your figgy pudding, it wasn't actually that the coin was worth anything, but if you found a coin in your figgy pudding, your Christmas pudding, that was wishing you good luck for the year. So a fun little memory from my childhood. And I never really liked Christmas pudding. It was kind of really like, it wasn't quite like the trifle, you know, the British trifle, but it's rich with heritage and tradition and just some really strong themes there. But so that is, if you ever wondered what the figgy pudding was, that's what it's all about. But we have just really enjoyed, well, we've enjoyed this this episode, but we've also enjoyed this year of our conversations, and just so encouraged by our listeners and the response from you. So we just wanted to, like Tom said, wish you a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, as from the Autonomic Healing podcast, in our conversations with you, Tom Pals.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.